So the other day I was watching a video from a YouTuber called Nihongo Gamer, who's a very big fighting game and arcade stick enthusiast, kind of like me. And he brought up a topic of conversation about the use of a certain device that a prominent fighting game community player tried to use in a tournament in Combo Breaker not too long ago here in the Midwest, in the Chicago area, which is the biggest fighting game tournament in the area. And I wanted to kind of expand on that. So for this little discussion we're going to discuss your controller. So the topic Nihongo Gamer brought up was this controversy about Daigo. What he tried to bring to the tournament at Combo Breaker was a accessory called the Hitbox. And the Hitbox has about the same layout as a normal arcade stick, but replaces the joystick with 4 directional buttons. And the whole thought of this was that the buttons themselves would give him more of an advantage over a person who may be playing with pad or an arcade stick. That being, with a joystick, there is a certain amount of space that you have, or dead zone, before it actually hits the actual contact for the directions. For instance, just look at this. This arcade stick has a small amount of dead zone before you actually hear a click. Whereas with buttons, just one push is a lot quicker than doing directionals on a joystick. He was denied being able to use that simply because they thought it would be too much of an advantage. And a lot of people kind of got upset about this and said, well, what controller you use in a tournament shouldn't matter. And I agree to that to a certain degree. One thing with that is, sure, you have the accessibility, which is a key word in all this whole thing, is accessibility. You want to be able to have people come and play your games regardless, because the more people you have playing into these big tournaments and everything gives more exposure to it. And that's how esports is growing, is more people have accessibility to not only the games, but to be able to play these games in any way. With all consoles, since games started coming home to the home console, you were given a control pad, be it the NES controller, the Super Nintendo controller, the Sega Genesis. They were all designed with in mind that those games could be played with that easily. But in a sense, it's also completely missing the experience of those older and sometimes even more newer games, or more modern games, because they were designed around a specific control scheme. When you look back at games like Centipede, they all used a trackball. Older systems such as like the Atari 2600 did have a trackball accessory that you could buy to play Centipede to get that experience. Was it required? No. Or like Gyruss or Arkanoid had the little dial switch. Can you still play with a regular control pad? Absolutely. But they made that accessible to people, so they didn't have to actually go and buy those accessories, because a lot of people didn't have the extra money to buy that. Same goes for modern games like Street Fighter. Not a lot of people have the extra funds or means or even desire to go out and buy and spend 2 or 3 times the amount of money on an arcade stick than they could on a regular PlayStation 4 or Xbox controller. Or for instance, even on Steam, you have the different ways of playing with keyboard or keyboard and mouse, or even using a Bluetooth controller. It still gives you the accessibility of being able to play those games. Well, I can't say it's a fault of the developers that they're not specifically saying, hey, if you really want to get the max experience out of this game, here's what accessory you should be using to experience this. But that doesn't mean that you can't use a general control pad to still be able to enjoy the game. You know, it's kind of like playing golf with a baseball bat. You're still abiding by the same rules, however, you're not using the clubs that were really meant to be used to play that certain game. You know, if I decide to go to a pro golf game and bring a baseball bat because I don't want to spend $500 on a pair of golf clubs, why would people be upset with me to do that? Well, for the one reason is I'm not playing on par with the same type of clubs as everybody else might be being. Now that doesn't include like different brands. You know, if a weight is heavier or if a club is heavier than another club, you know, but a baseball bat is a completely different object or a different accessory to play that. And that's where I think that the Nihongo Gamer was actually trying to get to was the fact that at this moment, playing in a fighting game tournament, you're welcome to use an arcade stick or a control pad. Now there are some that are more lenient where you can use a hitbox. But really, I feel to make that tournament be equal, there should be separate categories. Whether it be you're playing in the tournament with an arcade stick, or you're having one tournament with only arcade or controller pads, or a tournament only where you're using the hitbox. And that way you at least have that accessibility for the people who say, well, I'm not great with an arcade stick, I'm really better with a pad. They can go play that tournament. But they're not going to be playing against the other people who are using arcade sticks. As far as like retro games go, I personally have a hard time playing shooters without an arcade stick. I don't feel a pad gives me a full directional or the full ability to play that game. Even with certain fighting games, I much prefer having an arcade stick. I feel it gives me that more experience. Am I better with an arcade stick? No, by far, I'm really not. I do enjoy using arcade sticks, though. So let's recap a little bit, and these are just my opinions. Do I believe that playing a game to get the maximum experience requires you to use a certain controller? Absolutely. Do I believe tournaments should regulate what type of controllers each player uses in order to make the playing field level? Yes. I also believe that at some point, maybe you may want to split up tournaments to be accessible to different controllers, as long as the players are using the same ones. Do I think that's going to happen anytime soon? No, and really that's up to the tournament organizers. But if you're sitting at home by yourself or with a friend, and just to be able to have fun playing a game, does it really matter what controller you're using? No. In fact, go ahead, play Soul Calibur on Dreamcast with your fishing rod. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Let's make this a small discussion. I'm completely open to hearing other people's opinions. And as always, I thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Knockout!